Amazon. Teams. T-Life. 2 new items. App switch. ONB mobile. Continuity camera. Active. Continuity camera. Active. Continuity camera.
We are good. Welcome back to Blind Proofing, guys.
Speech off.
Yeah, sorry. Phone's talking. But yeah.
End stream. Live 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 30 seconds. You are Finder. Google Chrome. Messages, speech of pages.
Oh, all right. So pretty much, I'm gonna start off this episode by doing pretty much what is gonna be my checklist from here on out. Try not to make it stale every day. Thank you everybody who's been buying my books for after watching these streams. That means the world to me. Johnny Griot on Amazon, love that. Thank you so much. Links in the bio. Just made a Discord for my fellow RoyalRoad cultivators. Send me all your recommendations and your reviews for good lit RPGs on the Discord. Everybody's welcome. Join. Links again in the description for this video. I'm still gonna do some tweaking for the website over the next couple days. I gotta tweak my website and my Patreon, and I'm gonna get those set up so that you guys can start to vote for your favorite characters and who you want to see get the most chapters or bonus chapters, and voting always welcome. Of course, on RoyalRoad, if you give us 5 stars on any one of the series, we will give bonus chapters as well. What else did I want to tell you guys? Sorry about last night. Sorry about falling asleep. I was deadly tired. I know that's wild, but I did play a couple episodes, but I fell asleep during the second one, and I don't know. I just don't want to do that. I want to be a lot more professional in these. So in the future, if I'm dead tired, I'm just gonna, maybe do one and then wake up fresh the next morning.
Your stream's dead revives it with viewers Pt5. C 0 meters, UWHY, remove. E the space.
What? I don't know what was just said to me. Oh, sorry. I don't know. I didn't catch that comment, but you can try again. I'm so sorry. Yeah. What else did I have for you guys though? Sorry, that was cool. I just got the new comment system,
Increased system volume
set up, so I'm not used to it. That was awesome though. Also, yeah, let's dive in, guys, because I kind of don't want to always have to do the what are they called? The chapters. Not the story, but the chapters for YouTube videos, so you guys can click through them. I kind of don't want to have to do that every episode. I would like it so that we get to the content pretty quickly, and then from there it's like boom, 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 and people can stay engaged. But
Streamlabs desktop.
Maybe
Finder,
not even that
Google
either,
Chrome.
because now that I'm trying to get more people to chat and talk and do things, I think I might pause between episodes and talk about stuff too. So
Messages, speechify pages. Streamlabs Finder. Application, vertical split, icon view, collection, speechify, avid, folder. Now in, volume 1, why humans don't get status bar, icon 0, 1, 13, cards of untold power, 19, becoming a 8, 17, the first headache pages 16, taboo, pages 17, the first headache pages.
let's start here again, guys.
Body, page 7 of 9. Edit text, content selected body. Can you handle that? Asked Vega, looking the slightly overweight young cultivator in the speech muted.
17. The first headache. Vega stood before a line of people and honestly needed a moment to think, but knew she couldn't avoid handling what was happening in the southeast quarter, deciding to do both to the best of her ability. Antonio had gathered far more people than Vega would have liked, but it wasn't a hurdle that she couldn't overcome, just one that she would struggle with as she was now. "Come with me and we will walk the camp," said Vega to the group of gathered individuals. She strode up the stairs of the perimeter wall and made the group follow, uncaring of their hesitation to do so. All of them outranked her in this body, and with it currently being under the effect of Lincoln's soldier mode, the difference in core rank was non-existent, making the situation awkward. I wonder if they can feel it, and that's why they are so angry. Bet I could suppress their auras with how much soul energy is running through me currently. She wanted to try and felt the urge grow as a random silver at the back of the crowd spoke confidently underneath their breath, pushing those around them into a further agitated state. Is this a game to you? I mean, first you have us standing around, and now we are literally about to take a walk around this shithole like you're fucking puppies, said someone next to the silver near the back of the group, and Vega laughed. Tell me, leaders of Central Quarter, what do you see before you? Asked Vega, spreading her arms wide, gesturing both at the slowly being rebuilt South Quarter and the wilderness beyond the wall. Vega saw potential wasted. She saw a shell of the former ritual in which 300 had entered and given their all for one another, only to see her tradition turned into what looked more like a killing sport than a ritual meant to honor the lands that fed them. I'm assuming this isn't a trick, so I'm going to say structural weaknesses, said the young man that had introduced himself as Duke, who stood beside his sister, Dark. Oh, thank you by the maiden. In one, he's got it, said Vega with a single clap, taking in the shift from waiting for a payout to frustrated interest in what was being put in front of them to register slowly on the faces of each gathered there, with the exception of a few. Murch looks as slap-worthy as ever, and Greg and Bobby are becoming more and more confident by the second, thought Vega as she glanced at the small group. He said by the maiden he's got to be an old blood, right? Isn't that a little taboo? Murmured someone, and Vega laughed. Now I know I'll have to figure out what they mean by that for sure. No belief in the ancestor to both the mother and father you all pray to is not taboo, but that is for another time. What we are here to discuss is you all right, tempering through a process. That takes my time to complete, said Vega, turning on a heel to walk further, pointing toward the central district and its tallest tower. I would have thought that your families would have presented you all with tempering techniques for your bodies as they are now. But they did not, as me and my second are now undergoing, said Vega, gesturing toward a massive crowd of black cores, all struggling to continue the brutal pace being set by Lincoln, who'd returned from his task in less than 10 minutes to his own disappointment. To which he felt the answer to his yearning for blood could be sated by more training. We are using a tempering technique that will support us as we rise through many ranks, rather quickly, said Vega, letting all there see the dedication being displayed already. Why? Because she knew how it would change in the coming days. I show you not to brag as we walk by your broken quarters. I show you because I now have to pick up the fucking slack. Vega snapped, pacing the wall as she let go of a fury that had apparently traveled across time and space to follow her once more. This is supposed to be a fucking competition, but you all are acting like we aren't about to be fighting a wave boss at the end of the week. Oh wait, you're all a bunch of dimensional mages and are going to hit the panic button when the tornado that blows through here starts flinging shit everywhere. Right, asked Vega in a growing rampage as she roared in a momentary frenzy, only to pull herself together with a sudden overwhelming calm and clarity, taking another deep breath. Those gathered sharing looks at the outburst. They will need to believe that I can be sent into a rage easily, as that is an obvious weakness that the appearance to keep within will serve as its own purpose. Yes, there are limited spaces for teleportation out of here, and most of us are on that list. And with how strong you are, you can't be desperate to gain access, so I don't get what you are getting at, asked Dark in return, answering her true question without knowing she had, and pushing Vega's own agenda. He's not on the list. He's a bottom-feeding ground core with less value than those black core followers of his came from the back, and Vega closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying not to smile, but unable to help it. Knew it, rich and spineless. I, as a bottom feeder, have more skin in the game. I have more to lose, more invested in this ritual than all of you already. And what? You think that this lead will diminish if you all keep requesting my aid? Vega let the question strike in a way that left everyone gathered stunned, even those that listened from a distance or watched from the shadows. So there begins my point. Who should I waste my fucking time on? You weak asses are going to get custom tempering, because I refuse to be the reason why you all die. But as soon as shit gets difficult, you're going to run. I need to figure out which one of you sick fucks is in it for the pure thrill, is living in the moment, and or which of you is going for the Ancient's Completion achievement like me and the rest of... Illuminated? The word passed, murmured through the crowd. The energy could be felt from a distance, as all their auras shook with excitement at the chance that they could work with a family of the Illuminated. They all ascended, little minions. The Illuminated left us with only remnants of what they were. It is for us to reunite the path to heaven. Vega shook her head. Fuck it, I'd rather just get this done. I need the team who built the central tower. Anyone know where I can find them? That's not fair. Vega ignored the yeller and turned back to Dark as she raised her hand. That was me and mine young master, Vin, said Dark with a chuckle. I want 3 towers just like it. 1 above the Brackish Inn, and 2 more at the edges of East and South Quarter, just inside the limits of my own quarter. Meet me after this discussion for more information. No, do not delegate the build before we talk, and know that tempering is not payment for the work, said Vega, both putting a smile on Dark's face, before stripping it away in a few words, more than once in a single statement, surprising even Vega. How is this fair? Roared the same voice at the back of the crowd. Because if you idiots don't help, we are going to die anyway. Who contracted to build the wall? Asked Vega, looking over her shoulder at the group, watching another hand go up between the twins as she ignored the angry group at the back, moving on as if she'd never heard them speak. My group did the wall. Not to the degree that I would have liked to, of course, but it withstood much of what we faced. I'm sorry. I think we both know better. Vega pointed in multiple places. The concave interior of the wall they walked, the west quarter gate, and the stone railing. Are you capable of larger interlocking arrays? Asked Vega, turning back toward their continued path around the large camp, moving on as if she would be completely understood, regardless of the answer to the question she didn't wait to hear. I will assume you are for this example. I will need a functioning siphon for concussive energy, starting at the northwest quarter gate, said Vega, but Dark cut in with a question. Why not your own gate first? Vega frowned. Yeah, you don't think you own everything in here, do you? Said another in the crowd. They just don't see it. I thought this was a game at first, you know. Act stupid, someone else will solve this, but damn, are they actually dumb? Can they not see allowing their peers to be weak is allowing themselves to be the same? Vega's thoughts were, of course, her own opinion, but one born of strong community. She had only died to the loss of her own community. She thought she could do it alone, which was a folly that she would never let Lincoln live through as long as she had the option. I'll accept good questions, but stupid ones are not allowed. And I don't care what anyone told you. There are stupid questions, said Vega, looking around at sections she wanted to set up as potential interior defense points, but stopped as the migraine began. The cannons she mentally designed and placed throughout the interior wall disappearing from her vision, remaining in development stages until she fixed her largest issue. Vega turned back toward the group, kneading her temples. The minions' temples, her temples, did it matter? Vega was actually having a hard time thinking. Not because she didn't have access to a horde of nanobots, nor because she wasn't extremely smart and capable of things beyond these youths' very imaginations. In fact, she was doing all these things and more. So no, Vega wasn't struggling to be capable. She was a rocket trying to run on automobile fuel. It wasn't efficient. Furthermore, it was not the root of the issue. Instead, it was because of Lincoln's mind stat. Didn't think he could grow this fast. I've already hit a barrier, which is good, but bad if I don't learn how to grow. With her surveillance of the entire camp, pushing tempering to a maximum for the Imperials, and now constantly organizing what might as well be the entire leadership operation with how matters were progressing thus far, she needed more processing power. One point in mind would take the tension off the top. She knew it, but how was the issue? She didn't know if she was incapable of gaining stat points, or hadn't yet conceived a way to train with Lincoln's minions that would result in stat point gains. I wouldn't put an upgrade on my already very well-defended section of wall, while my rear defenses are waiting to be knocked the fuck over, leaving me open to attack, said Vega, pointing out the massive hole in one of the sections next to the northwest quarters gate. We can only walk over this hole because of how good this wall is structurally. I'll give you that, Sir Duke. But let's be honest, this was a joint effort between you and your sister doing the absolute minimal. So the remainder of my expectations will fall on both of you, said Vega, stopping their entire group atop one of many massive holes in the wall that had been built. She did this to show her faith in their work, as well as the level of work she expected to be completed at a minimum for those who hadn't actually been a part of any physical labor so far. All of us will sweat in the end, thought Vega, promising herself to make those in the back work 3 times as hard for anything they needed. I know this would be worse if you two didn't care at all, But now I need you to use everything that I give you to create the best wall possible, said Vega, looking between the near twin siblings. What do you have in mind? Asked Dark, as Duke nodded in agreement. To which Vega answered without pause, long having thought of such matters as long ago as her own young adulthood. Given a second opportunity to share her dreams from lifetime past, ideas that could only have been fable, until thousands of years later, where such inventions were beneath what her own body could accomplish on its own. Would more of us have survived if I shared my ridiculous plans back then? Elemental and concussive force converters to either side of every gate, formations that link those energy wells to a guided mana barrier, so we preserve as much power as possible, and rotational turret mounts, maybe a railway system, to allow for them to be moved for concentrated fire. What? Don't look at me like that. I don't mean gravitational railways or anything. Unless you two are capable of such things already, I don't have enough time to teach those kinds of concepts. Nor would my family want me to. Got to be safe with how I word things on stream right. If the governments know that I can do certain things, that may be sticky. She was operating off very limited information hacked from Feast's server, but still the information felt minor in ways that showed a timidity in the search for knowledge. A fact that told Vega that any information beyond basic monster core use as progression tools was probably outside the norm, and probably dangerous to own information. What? Asked Vega, looking around. It was more than just Dark and Duke who was stunned. Murch turned his head toward a beautiful orc woman and smiled, raising a hand palm out toward her. The woman promptly putting white diamond mana crystals in his hand as she cursed underneath her breath. Pay up, said Murch, and the woman shook her head. Looks like I'm just losing all my bets today, said the long-haired woman. How old is your family again? Asked Murch, pocketing the crystals. As youthful as a newborn. Now back to our dilemma, we have more tasks, and only so much more of my time. Wait, you can't just say all that and move on. You don't own this quarter. So for you to do all that work here first is going to cost a fuck ton, and they don't deserve the aid. You see how much pride the people who invested in this quarter had in it. Look just how grand they treated it. They barely bought a single defense. And now, because you don't want to take an early loss. What? You are going to clean up the messes? Probably like you're very, very old. Family has taught you to in a situation like this, right? Asked Murch, seemingly mocking Vega's earlier display of anger. Ha ha, Murch. I don't own this quarter, but I bet it's cheaper than the upgrades I'm about to buy to be built, and whoever does own it would be an idiot to turn down my aid, but with every time you try and point out that I might have an older than normal family, the more training I'm going to put you through, you know that right. Shut it, Duke. It's not going to be pleasurable. Or easy, said Vega, stopping the man before he could speak. Duke closed his mouth and lowered his hand, looking towards something in the quarter they walked by. Vega liked to see what he'd caught sight of and smiled as Antonio ran by, giving Vega an opportunity. Antonio? The young man stopped, looked up at the wall and bent at the waist. Yes, young master, said Antonio, in a yell that tried to demand the same respect as the leader he spoke with, as his two assistants managed to catch up to him. Both seemingly exhausted. Who owns this quarter? Has it even been bought yet? Antonio laughed to Vega's surprise. Yes, it was bought by a Lady Gearbox, however. She is currently in debt to a Lady Demon Mask, said Antonio, first pointing toward Vega's heckler at the back of the crowd, and then toward the beautiful orc woman speaking with Murch. Relevance, Antonio, for the confused birds fluttering about. If Lady Gearbox finds a way to pay, she will own it and may or may not be willing to let you buy. But since the majority of her wealth... Oh, don't talk about that part, okay? If she don't pay, you pretty much own this quarter already. No, not that either. I'm sure it's on my list to buy this quarter somewhere. I think I read that. Well, good luck, sir. I must get back to it. Antonio was gone before he could even reprimand the young man, flipping through pages of the notebook Vega gave him to use. Vega could only sigh. That was not the point by any means, thought Vega sullenly to herself, hoping to have shown the importance of information gathering, only to have shown something else entirely. I don't know that me and my brother could complete those tasks entirely without guidance, said Dark with a lack of her previous playfulness, and Vega waved her off. I'll be sending people to your shops. Have you not already relocated them within the southeast quarter? Asked Vega, moving on at the nods from both siblings. It will take me some time to train them appropriately, but they will be there soon to show you how to complete these tasks. Now, moving on, Chip. I've already told you that I want you to find Runt of Black. Vega stopped and began pacing in place. We are going to need him to survive the first boss, and keep it outside of the walls, said Vega in explanation, no longer caring to assume that those around her were truly aware of the incoming dangers abroad. And that is the second time they were told of floor bosses, and none of them flinched. Either they all knew, or have incredible training. It's probably a bit of both. Can you handle that? Asked Vega, looking the slightly overweight young cultivator in the eyes, seeing the terror at the edges of his gaze as he tore his eyes away from the wilderness abroad, and looked back to Vega. I know I'm asking a lot, being the third day. Portals should begin to appear at any moment, and you will be at far greater risk in the wilderness, so the option is yours. Chip nodded quickly. This surprised her, but with the footage she'd managed to see from those that walked around the brackish inn watching it, she felt good about his survival instincts. Yes, sir. I'm forming a group of people willing to search him out. Many heads turned at this announcement, murmurs between those near unbelieving of what they heard growing in volume, until a new voice entered the fray, heading up from behind Vega, apparently walking the wall, coming from the northern gate in the counter to their clockwise path. I would also like to join this search party if that isn't a hindrance, young Master Vin, said Tank of White as he approached on foot. The murmurs shifted, and Vega had to force down the eye roll that threatened to diminish her class at the deference slowly transforming the faces of those that had only just been antagonizing her at the approach of Tank of White and his friendly greeting. This is no bother to me, Tank. I am sure your need to test your mettle as your sister has is causing your heart to beat wildly. Tank of White smiled, even bending at the waist slightly. Those behind Vega even gasping to her disbelief. To act so envious over a bow or shortening of a title bar ridiculous. This can't be that big of a deal, can it? She wished she knew more about the cultural changes that had occurred over thousands of years, as how they looked at her now seemed alien to her. Call me Tyranny, friend, as I hope to one day call you Vin, young master. Vega narrowed her eyes at him. They weren't truly friends, so why was he being so nice? What does he... Oh no, not without great cost, young Tyranny. The payment for that will be vast. Vega shouldn't have let it slip that she could temper an entire body, as Tank of White was far more sharp than he let on, which Vega had picked up during her short spurts of spying on him and his sister over the last few days. It is too soon for your next tempering Tyranny. You will need time to come into your expanded abilities. Trust me. Tyranny sighed softly, rubbing the back of his neck with one hand, looking Vega in the eyes as he smiled and nodded in agreement. This was only partly true. Tyranny could indeed temper the rest of his body now, but it would at the same time increase the drastic nature of the changes that would occur in his body, thus truly making the process more difficult to complete. Well then, can we train together? I don't have anyone who can compete like another loyalty card user like myself, but you, even before now, I have struggled to find proper training partners, said Tyranny. Wait, that wasn't a crock of shit, asked another new voice, and Vega didn't even turn his head to face Runt of Red, the red core sitting in a nearby shadow almost completely invisible. No, I too am a loyalty card user, but not of the Imperial nature. Is it true that Runt of Black can strip entire core ranks with a single attack? Asked Vega, still staring down Tyranny. Only for Tank of White to nod slowly, aiding Vega in moving the conversation away from a loyalty card she didn't have, nor want, knowing how fragile the need for followers was. Runt of Red only recovered due to his family's knowledge of formations and meditation practices, and even then he said he was lucky, said Tyranny. Vega turned her head toward the young man in the shadow. Is this true? Runt of Red hesitated, but then nodded with a face of anger and begrudging respect for what she assumed was Lincoln's skill. That ability will get him killed if too many learn of it, thought Vega, both excited and terrified with what Lincoln would be able to accomplish with that skill. She took another deep breath and looked skyward. Well, then we are going to have to watch out for him, figure out what makes him tick, and bring him to our side. However, this is not the time for this. I need to finish with preparations for the next wave with those gathered. And that will not happen with these continued interruptions, said Vega, looking between everyone as she spoke, but landing on Runt of Red, forcibly unclenching her fist, suddenly aware of a defensive stance she had taken while being potentially surrounded on all sides by enemies, as she now felt. Can I contract with you and yours to work with the teams building the new defenses? You will be far more critical when choosing defensive locations than they will be naturally. The Red nodded in response, emerging from the shadow and becoming fully visible to all gathered. Some there only then aware of where he had been speaking from. Good. Now, my people have already begun training at their level, said Vega, waving a hand toward the massive group of black cores running by outside the perimeter wall, led by Lincoln and other allied higher-ranked cores in the colorless army, Vega smiling as the higher ranks struggled to keep pace with Lincoln, who barely tried to slow down his dead sprint to facilitate those around him. However higher ranks can sustain higher levels of training, this will need to happen if we are going to have you all believe that we will survive this. As before, I both pointed out, and you acknowledge that our lives as bottom feeders, those without an escape hatch built into our lineages, are meaningless and to be left to the slaughter. So if I at least make the odds higher in your favor, maybe you all will linger to be amused by our deaths that much longer, increasing the colorless army's overall chances, said Vega with a laugh. How do we know that you don't finally focusing on them long enough to take... Lady Gearbox, how beautiful you are. Bald head, blue-eyed, and possibly one of the prettiest faces she'd ever seen. Yet that didn't change how Vega answered. Because if I truly were a part of a family as old as you all seem to think I am, we wouldn't be allowed an escape. Because if you die, because my life depends on it.
He's a sneaky one, Vega. You
13. Edit tech. Body 18. Breach. Selected. Actions available. Format text quickly by voiceover jumping to the formatter. Press Control, Option, Command.
Scene. Breach. The first, glow with resplendent light in place of the equivalent to glacial ice, thawing and cracking across miles and miles of frozen land, filled the labyrinth as her aura tried to burst the small dimension like a thin water balloon being forced to its limits. Balance, was all the cultivator said, and the sound ceased. A giant rune lit above, and the cultivator was able to round, finding no monsters of any kind, not coming across any danger until she stretched her senses wide, finding no wildlife, but instead a pure black portal, the near antithesis to her own, eating energy from the dimension hungrily, not but a few kilometers away. What is going on? I doubt there would be that many worthy disciple candidates in this tiny pocket dimension, yet still, she couldn't sense the other existence that had walked into the pocket dimension, which was alarming all on its own, but then she felt more. Another ascended. She felt a golden portal, and then even a silver portal opened, followed by a red, a purple, blue, orange, yellow, green, brown, and even a second black portal. More ascended, exited portals all throughout the labyrinth, and the dimension continued to grow. The system of runes above that had once been like a large beacon in the sky, becoming more of a twinkling starlight with how expanded the network of runes was forced to become under the duress of all the ascended cultivators stepping into the environment. Her own energy brought raw, purified mana. The gold ascended brought a wealth of soul energies. The silver infused the space with law and a union of collective consciousness. The red came with an influence over passion, drive, and war. The purple brought physical and ethereal mysteries, and she even felt dungeons forming at their presence. The blue came with both known and hidden knowledge and a desire to craft or inspiration to explore the arts, both physical, mental, and magical. The orange came with seasons, bringing a rustling wind that hadn't existed previously, and she couldn't help but smile at the feeling of rain on her face. The droplets, unable to penetrate through her body's outer layers of light, cooling her incredibly warm skin to the point that she giggled as she watched steam rolling off her form. The yellow's presence saturated the space with the potential for spirits, astral presences, and even untamed elementals. As the green ascended's first step made the earth ripple as more terrains were given space to grow, she couldn't believe what she was witnessing. The brown stepped through, and though she was nearly the lowest ranked ascended, it was this woman's presence that linked everything, brought a natural order to the chaos that was a new dimension being solidified by the presence of higher powers. This is going to be bad, isn't it? The final ascendant stepped through, and the void connected the dimension to all others as the space transformed entirely from a pocket-sized instance space into what could only be described as an entirely new world. Silence fell, and she hoped for a moment that what she feared wouldn't occur. But as she saw the other ascended begin to flee through the portals they entered through, she knew that her worst fear was before her. The air itself began to shake, and the first roar could be heard. Knowing that her continued presence would only make matters worse, she fled, returning home, and hoping that the portal to her homeland would close, long before anything of significant power could develop and enter. Maybe even one of the more worthy can survive this and escape into prison. She stepped through the portal and sighed, already missing the feeling of rain on her face. Hopefully, Vega's entire body turned with each portal's opening. Black, white, gold, silver, red, purple, blue, orange, yellow, green, brown, black, and another white. The runic arrays began to shift into grand formations above them all, and Vega sighed, knowing that what they would face would be far worse than anything her and her brethren faced countless years prior. We are all going to die in here. All those gathered now stare at her, as she'd been mid-sentence when she felt the portals snap into existence. She'd been waiting on this, excitedly expecting there to be a handful of portals in the beginning T-most. However, this was instead what Vega could only believe was a heroic tragedy of apocalyptic proportions being brewed in a volcanic environment. Should we dig? No, they must leave. Take everyone you can and leave now, said Vega, looking to everyone around her atop the wall. Fuck are you even saying, Vin? Said Murch, only for a rumbling to punctuate his question. We were visited by too many ascendants. The bosses created from this will be... The rest of Vega's sentence was stripped from her mouth. Her eyes trembled at the sight of the first roaming core as its birth began amidst the trees. A single tree grew taller than its siblings. A humanoid version of all the other unmoving wildlife ascending as a core of nature, twisted into existence at the giant's collar. Gnarled roots twisting infinitely into one another as their thorns grew, moving perfectly into all the unused space left, forming a perfect sphere of pulsing natural energies. The titanic figure knelt between the trees, its body constructed from what seemed to be a dense yet perfectly smooth wood. Only Vega wasn't able to see further developments to the figure being born within the wilderness, as the forest around the boss exploded with life and began to stretch in every direction, growing wildly in its expanse. Vega's eyes shot to the north, where a mountain was growing, and growing and growing. As her eyes rose upward, so too did her shock as increasingly bigger and more formidable creatures bursted from various sections of the mountain. Vega was shocked to see its frozen peaks with such clarity at the distance they were from the new geography being formed. The dense jungles leading down the sides of the incredible new land feature were an attractive and lushly vibrant sight, and even a magma eruption occurring from its base, from what could only be one of countless caves throughout the mountain, caught her eye momentarily. Something lay within, said Vega, muttering to herself. Only for her mind to then shoot to the southwest. Even before she could turn her head, she could feel the storm. Where the massive waterfall's origin was, Vega could not tell even from her vantage point. From where she stood, it seemed to be an incredible lake, spilling over down into a series of valleys below, and unless the incredibly large storm above the area was able to consistently fill the depths of what she was looking at, she felt she missed something in how what she was looking at worked mechanically. Maybe a large geyser. She pushed that thought aside, watching as the storm elemental's body formed within the clouds above the lake. Lightning surged into its chest as its core too formed. Ice was made into armor, water its veins, as lightning and wind became the conduit of its soul. The being that fell out of the clouds was terrifying. A titanic form of living sky plunged into the lake, causing a tidal wave to be sent in every direction. The labyrinth grew. The sky changed. The air thickened, and still Vega could feel something roaming among them now. A being both powerful enough to stay out of her sensory systems completely and stop the three roaming cores that she could feel even now, from surging toward their little camp and snuffing it out with a single step like the many around him stopped, everything shaking as it now was. But he continued. This wasn't something to play with. Lincoln spread his senses as far as he could, watching as the dimension itself became a living and breathing world. Some would think that this probably happened a lot, but Lincoln knew with how Vega had gone from planning playfully to muttering in objective panic, that it most likely didn't. So, he cooked. Why? Because of the importance of food. Vega seemed to think it was the temptation of power that kept the Black Core populace so loyal to their fabricated young Master Vin, while Lincoln had other ideas. Their expanded kitchen came with more people interested in learning the profession, hoping to have it unlocked within their book of thoughts through hard work and training. When Lincoln looked into their eyes as they worked, he felt a sensation that had caused him to share everything he prepared with them. Their pleased smiles when tasting new foods, on top of being given a chance to learn, was reward within itself. Then, as he too took a bite of food, after having had grown hungry, he had a thought. What if they are all just as hungry as I was? He'd had the thought at the end of training as he prepared for the Brackish Inn's guests earlier, and began to use a runner to make his changes feel official. Sir, there is a lot going on outside, and young Master Vin is calling for all high-ranking individuals to leave with as many people as they can. He said you have been offered a spot amongst... Lincoln waved a hand through the air. Did he accept my request to provide 2 meals a day for all who train underneath me? Antonio nodded. Yes, sir. But are you not going to leave with those? Lincoln shook his head. No, I have much food to prepare for those who will be trying to survive alongside me and young Master Vin. Will you be leaving? I can speak to the young master myself if you... It was Antonio's turn to cut in, the young man taking a knee as his fist rose to his chest in salute. No, sir. I will deliver your message, and thank you, sir. All those brave enough to stay will know of you and the young master's decision. Antonio took Lincoln's nod as his confirmation to return to their leader. But through their bond, Vega was well aware and shifting plans around that she would have never even considered, until the threat to their lives became truly considerable. Lincoln's senses couldn't stretch far enough for him to look at the three bosses that had been birthed due to some sort of opportunistic event that Vega still hadn't explained to Lincoln. But he could tell that the power coming from them felt no less than the guards that surrounded the First Imperial. Cultivators with hundreds of years of life experience, on top of the sheer amount of time that those individuals had to expand the size of their cores. This made the potential of their handling by the newborn babes that their camp consisted of practically impossible. So what is the plan for us moving forward? What? There is no plan for this, Lincoln. This is what happens in fables before everyone dies horrific deaths. This is my absolute worst fear, only it's actually occurring and not just something I'm trying to prepare for in the worst case, said Vega into Lincoln's mind. Lincoln somehow able to feel the seriousness of what was being shared by the use of his name. A name he wasn't still entirely used to, but still found himself growing fond of. You just admitted it is your worst fear. Could you at least tell me why? Isn't everyone down here being sacrificed to the realm anyway? Thought it was supposed to be difficult to survive. You're making it seem like this isn't normal. Because it's not, Lincoln. What normally happens here is a realm is visited from a few, or a handful at most ascended from varying realms. This is what determines the difficulty of what can and will be faced, Vega said, explaining further. And your cohort was just visited by 13 aligned Ascended Link. It's like a pantheon of gods visiting your local high school as talent scouts. Lincoln paused in his process, letting the egg-dipped poultry sizzle as he considered what Vega had just said. This changes everything, and maybe not in the good way like my affinity palm did. A heavier bar being raised even higher. Lincoln didn't exactly know that he was going to survive before. So now that the odds were apparently lower, he only felt that much more eager to rebel against expectation. How can we use this to our advantage? Would you be able to grow our power base by sending multiple minions through multiple portals? The questions were both wild and exciting to contemplate. As within reason, Lincoln felt Vega controlling multiple minions should be possible, while on the other side of the spectrum of sanity was the unrealistic standpoint that Lincoln expected their traveling into portals that lead into other worlds could and or would be successful. What? I mean, Vega said, starting to contemplate not what she would have done in this situation thousands of years ago, herself, and instead began to fuss over the details of what she could do now, with Lincoln as her teammate, and the beginnings of the loyal following that they were too cultivating as they grew their internal power base. We could learn as much from each Ascended's culture as possible, but the likelihood that we meet the criteria to learn with each group selected by each Ascended is highly unlikely, however. However? Lincoln's mind began to race with excitement, even as death was born around him in a trinity of epic proportions. That doesn't mean we can't learn from those that come back from those regions. Now that I did not consider, but if what we can learn from each new world is all that special, I could see why it would be so important to you, thought Lincoln in his bond's direction. The Ascended within are supposed to help all they can to survive what is to come, which is why they normally limit the number of portals sent into a pocket dimension to under a half dozen. Pretty sure we only had 3 in my own, and those we learned from were considerable, far above even your first Imperial in power. Lincoln flipped the golden fillet and let the sizzle continue, dusting the food with light seasonings. So again, I ask, where do we begin? Silence filled his mental space as he awaited her response. At the bottom, of course. Vega turned back to see most of the high-ranked cores standing where they had been since the beginning. The world had changed around them all, and though Vega expected them to run, none did. You're not leaving, are you? Asked Murch, and Vega rolled her eyes. You already know I'm staying, Murch. What is your point? Murch looked around at all those atop the wall with him and smirked. I thought I was mad for a moment, losing my mind even. But then I looked around as the literal sky shook, and beings...
Sorry guys, love my cat, but can't do the constant meowing.
Untold power were born before my very eyes, and I didn't see this. All of this, said Murch, gesturing around at them all. I was smiling like a fucking lunatic as trees turned into a colossal titan. Whatever you are about to say doesn't matter. I bet you are already thinking of ways to survive all of this, said Murch, pointing at Vega as he cut her off.
Upward Marmalade,
I
best
do owe
viewers.
you a lot of money, but I am still in power, said Delilah, the orc smiling as well. From what I've been told, your second has had even less of a reaction than you, almost as if he expected this. In fact, the colorless army is already moving toward creating a system that allows them to be fed twice a day, and trained as if they will be the force that ascends at the end of all this on the achievement platforms, said Delilah, causing many around them to murmur and send their own assistants off to reassess the movements being made throughout the camp. From the moment this sacrifice started, everything has been different from what we have all been told. And let's be real, young Master Vin, you're a Brown that knows of the ascended portals that spawn in the sacrifice ritual of realms. This should be impossible. Yet it is not. Additionally, if your family is as old as I believe it to be, then you want everyone who is strong to leave, especially now that 7 ascended portals have spawned, said Delilah, glancing at Murch when speaking about the fabled young Master Vin's family age. Pray tell, why would I want that? Said Vega with a growing sneer. Because when you survive and take the top platform, your achievement will be that much more incredible without the aid of strong allies, said Murch, as Antonio and a few other runners sped up the wall stairs and toward the various gathered leaders. It is 8 portals, said the bald gearbox beauty. 10, said Delilah, reading a piece of paper, even as Murch shook his head and spoke up. We got 11, actually, said Murch, turning more pale the longer he read. Vega crumbled the paper in his hand and looked between Antonio and where Vega knew the near-invisible runt of red stood covered in shadows and twisted light. Did you get 13 as we did? Asked Vega aloud to the stealth user. Yes, young Master Vin, we did, came the young man's voice from the darkness. Bullshit. No way your people counted that many ascended portals, said the gearbox scion. His people are mostly unseen, and mine are trying to prove themselves worthy. Don't take it personally, said Vega, pointing toward herself, and then the shadows as she stepped toward the nearby stairs, pausing before taking the first downward step. If you all are going to stay, you should have begun working on one of the many matters we all discussed here today. But if you are leaving, I expect you to be gone before sunrise, said Vega, stepping down the stairs. Or face consequences. Antonio now had a teleportation card, a card with potential well beyond his current ability to use as masterfully as he believed he one day could. Anywhere I've ever been. He'd spoken the words written across the card he'd been given, as Vin took a far lesser card, known as Blink Step. His new ability had forced him to give his assistants roles of their own, as any who saw Antonio at this point knew who he was. I see. I will take this news to the appropriate individuals, said Antonio with a slight bow. Delilah shook her head as she waved him off, and Antonio spoke to himself mentally as he triggered the card, and appeared before the second. Antonio waited patiently as the young man finished cooking a dish that the messenger hadn't had until after training that morning. The smell made him now drool as he remembered his first encounter with the dish, and it wasn't until later that he overheard Murch state that the colorless army was being fed better than potentially even some of the Imperials, due to how good this man's cooking was. Have you had your second meal of the day yet, Antonio? The second turned around, and Antonio shook his head. No, Sir Second, I have not. The young man nodded and smiled. You wouldn't mind being a taste tester for me. If you like it, you can eat the whole thing. Antonio was reluctant at first, able to take in the subtle warnings being sent in his direction behind the young man. A back being turned suddenly, a shake of the head from another. Even the quick and repetitive crossing of their arms from someone who walked behind the young man. I've seen him training with young Master Vin. Odds are the second can tell what is being done behind him. I better just try it, thought Antonio with a reluctant nod. Of course, sir. What exactly am I having? The young man gestured for him to walk toward another table as he set down the bird he'd just plated. The pair paused before the young man slid aside a tablecloth, revealing what Antonio could only describe as colorful. A toasted bit of bread was sliced in half to reveal vegetables, stacked atop meat and fried cheeses, all grilled to perfection and lightly seasoned. "What is this, my lord?" Antonio had slipped and given this honorific to this young man multiple times already, to which the man always narrowed his eyes and shook his head as he sighed heavily. "I am okay with you lunatics all suddenly calling me Sir Second or whatever, but Lord is just taking it off the ledge, friend. This was called a sandwich, and since I am bringing it back from the dead, I am naming it a feast." Antonio reached out and was pleased as the bread supported his choice in using his hands like a savage and raised the previously sandwich, now feast, to his lips and took a hearty bite. His eyes went wide and he felt himself talking almost as if what he was eating gave him no choice. "Oh my fucking God, by the Father's throne, this is ambrosia in my mouth." The young master pulled back more of the cloth and began slicing the bread, raising the food toward other obviously interested parties. The very same that had just told him not to eat. "What just happened? Wipe that look off your face, Antonio. Your peers are just worried about the price of what you just ate," said the young master as he entered. "Fresh out the oven. Want some, young master?" asked his second. The young master nodded and took a section of the rather large loaf of bread. "Has to be multiple connected loaves, maybe. How is that new card treating you?" asked the young master, snapping Antonio from his mental musings. "Well, it lucked me into a new dish by Sir Second, and I bet with time I'll be able to teleport in combat. Just don't see how that will happen without prepping by knowing my environment first." The pair eating in front of him shared a look, the young master sighing and looking away before his second shrugged. "What the fuck did I just miss? And why do I always feel like they're talking without using words? Am I missing something, Sir Second?" The young man put down his sandwich and crossed his arms. "What is the name of your card?" "Anywhere I've ever been," said Antonio without hesitation. "Anywhere you have ever been physically, mentally, metaphorically." "One would assume physically," said Antonio in response, not truly understanding where the young man was going with his inquiry. "Why, because the card says that is your limit, or because you made that your limit." The young man leaned in as he spoke, suddenly seeming angry at Antonio in a way that made him feel small, only for it to be wiped away as he smiled and leaned back. "Metaphorically, I could be anywhere with enough technicalities. I mean, hell, I've been in the air above a building. I've been in arm's reach of someone I've been chasing after, or inside
Ziggy,
someone's
stop.
guard." Antonio froze, letting bit of food fall free of his mouth. "Good for you, buddy. Just don't teleport out of here if you truly want to stay. You've been here, but with the permission of the system. And as the currently highest-ranking sacrifice, I won't allow you to re-enter if you leave when they prompt me and ask my permission," said the young master, softly patting him on the shoulder, gesturing for his second and Antonio to follow. "Yes, sir." Antonio didn't realize how powerful he was, even with the realization he'd just had alongside young Master Vin and his second. They all spoke casually as he thought over the limitations of what he could now do, and Vin, seeing through his current state of mind, made a suggestion. "He's more wound up than a toddler sipping juice," said the young master, jabbing a thumb in Antonio's direction. "He'll calm down, or he won't. Both could be beneficial to him," said a man still without name in Antonio's mind. He was just Sir Second. "Do you think Murch would mind if I made changes?" asked the young man, waving a hand toward the small market being built just outside the new limits of the brackish inn. "No, not if you tell him why first. And why not make a game of things, my boys? Push Antonio beyond his mental limits." Sir Second shrugged and smiled, causing Antonio to do the same. The gesture felt familiar, and seemed to be one used amongst friends between the pair, and Antonio's choice didn't seem to bother his leaders. "What do you have in mind, young master?" Young Master Vin looked around as they walked the edge of the market with casual strides. "You've stood on a balcony before, yes. Why not that balcony over there?" Antonio thought for a moment. He indeed had stood on a few different balconies in his life. He remembered those moments, staring toward the destination the young master had pointed toward with an absolute fixation. "Hard to focus on something new and walk, but he is looking at me like he expects this to be simple for me," thought Antonio with a glance toward the young master. It was as he remembered the breeze that touched his face the last time he'd been upon a balcony that Antonio's card triggered. As he stood jarringly trying to conceive his relocation, he heard a whistle that drew his attention. Antonio looked down, and without thought returned to where he had left from. The cost of triggering the card was minimal in its current state, and Antonio jogged over smiling until he saw a growing frown on the young master's face. "What's wrong, my lord? Did I do something?" The young master swept a hand through the air. "You have stood by my side. Why did you not return there?" Antonio thought for a moment, feeling the flicker of memories flooding to the edges of his consciousness, filling his card with viable options to teleport with. Only, young Master Vin pointed again and spoke simply. Everyone has jumped, therefore. You have been in the air? Why not the air above that building? Antonio looked, at first searching for various memories as triggers, and none worked, until his mind drifted toward times he'd fallen accidentally, or been forced to jump across large gaps of space. He felt himself suddenly falling toward a nearby roof after remembering a recent jump from one rooftop to another while running through the camp. His landing was rough, as he wasn't entirely expecting to teleport when he had, only to find himself placed well above where he would have reasonably chosen to start his descent from. Ow! That is going to take some practice. He dusted himself off, checking his bones for fractures and breaks, finding none as he tried to quickly check himself for injury and return to the side of his leader. Once at the roof's edge, he pulled on the speeches made by the young master as his catalyst, and to find that it worked made Antonio smile when he appeared next to his leader and Sir Second. This works out fantastically. Do you think he can bring someone back with him? The young master shook his head. His cards naming convention says otherwise, but maybe if he considered those he teleported with him as a part of himself, which is already a stretch. Why, who do you want here all of a sudden? Sir Second looked back at the market and frowned. Murch, if I'm going to leave for a period of time, I need to make sure that he doesn't let this continue. Antonio looked around at the rather crowded market, unable to see what was wrong with the area. What is he able to see that I am missing? The market was full, and sales of all kinds were being made. Antonio could see no issues. What's wrong? Organizational flow. The grannies had to work out a way to make it so that everyone made sales in the market, so they had systems in place, and everyone indeed made incredible sales. With this structure, many will not diversify their choices and spend highly in only two sections, the entrance and the center. Sir Second highlighted the most trafficked areas and showed the disgruntled faces of those without visitors in the middle of the market's large square. How would you organize it? Asked Antonio, curious. It's called a merchant spiral. From each cardinal direction, you have 2 drink vendors, one hot and one cold, to either side of the 8 entry points. Then further in, you have an expensive food option, across from a cheaper option, often of a different category of food. Then further in toward the middle, you have an attraction across from a general goods vendor or merchant, followed by non-magical crafting shops. And then finally toward the center in the middle is everything rare and limited. Antonio watched the young master's eyes go wide momentarily, and their leader smiled, but Antonio had questions of his own. Just so I understand, as it seems you are preparing for an external mission, Sir Second, why are those choices to be made this way? Will certain vendors not feel a favoritism is being given to some, especially the drink vendors on the outside of the ring of shops? Sir Second smiled. Let's say you walk toward a merchant spiral, and you are hungry. You have to pass a drink stall, not 1 but 2, or if you are thirsty, it is what you are greeted with to begin. If you are interested in a particular type of shop, this shop's placement will cause you to have to pass by many other shops to even get what you are looking for. Even if you enter through the side, the entrance the shop is closest to, also, many then become familiar with how the merchant spiral is set up and want to explore each entrance and exit to see all the options. Many often start hungry at one end, shop for hours as they lose track of time, and then exit after grabbing food at shops located on a completely different side of the spiral. Bathrooms should also only be built on the outside ring for this exact reason. This, too, will grant the most exposure. Antonio looked back at the setup of shops as they currently were, and knew that from the dealings that Murch had with many of the silvers that ran shops for him or through him, that the new setup may be highly unfavored, until they saw the reality of what had just been shared with him. Antonio bent deeply at the waist, truly not having had expected such a detailed explanation. Thank you, sir. If you don't mind, I can handle this for you. Leave it to me. Sir Second gave him a nod, and Antonio left, returning shortly thereafter to the pair still discussing something fervently. So I only have, 3 days to check out all 13 portals before Ascended will come through. The young master nodded. We have a few more stops to make, and I think Murch should be here to start on your suggestions, said the young master, and again began the game of point and teleport. Both his leaders found more and more crazy or crafty locations for him to go, And after Sir Second had Antonio stand within a large vault being carved into stone for young Master Vin below the casino already under construction beneath the Brackish Inn, Antonio stopped wondering where he could go and began to wonder where he couldn't.
Anywhere I've ever been. One of the strongest cards, because that's what a lot of this series is going to have to deal with, is like breaking people's mental limiters, like especially with like Antonio. Vega shows healers that they can be incredibly strong just by, you know, regeneration. And then we have, of course, Lincoln showing the world, the realms, everybody that black cores, taboo or not, are actually incredibly powerful. And rediscovering that knowledge base is much of the series. Super excited. Super excited.
Speech
so
unmuted.
Excited.
Finder. Find pages. Pages. 18. Close. Finder. Finder. 19. Pages. Body. Page 1 of 3. Edit text. Insertion. Finder. Streamlabs desk. Group. 0 viewers. Group. Live 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 30 seconds. End stream. Button. Live 0 hours, 58 minutes. End stream. Group. 2 viewers.
Oh.
You are currently on the text element.
I didn't know I had 2 viewers. But, yeah.
Pages. Pages. 19.
We are back to...
Beginning of text
19.
body 19.
Any questions before I start, or am I good to dive back in?
Body 19. Becoming a scout.
It's always cool to be able to interact with you guys. And I also am going to be doing a free giveaway for best comment in the video, by the way. I'm going to start doing that, trying to respond to people with download codes for books off the website. Just like I said, I got to finish the update to the website and get that worked out. Yeah. But what's Boogie? I'll pause it if anybody says anything.
Copy. Speech muted.
19. Becoming a scout. What? You heard me, I want him, said Lincoln, pointing toward Antonio. No, said Vega. And Lincoln knew that she meant it. Not in a for show kind of way. She wasn't playing a character or making moves through a performance. She just told him no. And why not? You have so many people that have to work for you now, and I literally am just asking to take Antonio. Vega crossed her arms at him, his minion's body in a pose that demanded respect in its sudden dominion over the situation at hand. Why do I feel like I'm not arguing with someone that is supposed to work for me? No, be entirely on my side. You know the truth. I'd rather send every silver in here with you across the bloody realms than give you Antonio for an hour. And you want him for 3 fucking days, no. As much as that hurt to hear, I agree, he may only work for him, but the efficiency of knowing that we can get messages back to the young master in seconds is amazing. You're going to have to share what kind of mental training you put him through to increase his skills so suddenly, said Murch, looking between Vega and Antonio. I don't care what either of you is saying right now. I'm realm hopping across who knows how far a distance to learn as much as possible about our visitors before this summit. What did you call it? Summit of Ascended. We will be visited by one or some of the Ascended from each open portal that breached our realm sacrificial ritual, said Vega, pointing toward a section of empty space as a group of workers carried in another chest of monster cores. Yeah, and you want me to do that alone? Fuck no. I want our best for 3 days. Or I guarantee subpar results, said Lincoln. Partially don't care about the subpar results. We don't have a better teleporter, and our second best would be you. And you want to make it so that we are down not only our second most skilled fighter of a handful, and make it so that our strongest means of communication is with you? No. Lincoln looked between Murch, who couldn't understand why there were more chests coming into the safe below the Brackish Inn, actively deciding to stay silent. Help me, Murch. I need Antonio. If he is by my side, and I learn something that can make all of our army stronger, Antonio can not only bring the info back to you all, he can fucking come back to me as well. We don't have a better bridge than that. Lincoln looked to the large young man and was surprised to see a lack of the giant smile he normally wore like a situationally defensive mask, much like many of them do. Tell me where you learned what a merchant spiral is. Lincoln chuckled. Fuck you, buddy, and make sure each lane is L-shaped and the center is circular with all the shops out-facing. Why? Asked Merchanoid. Because I said so, and because the general goods stores will be larger and need more space at the center of each lane. And if the center is circular, the more shops that can be seen, the closer to the center you get, said Lincoln, both trying to agitate his new peer and explain. I know why I believe that is important, but why do you believe that is important? Lincoln shrugged, not understanding that he was showing a side of himself, not constructed by Vega, or put forth as a demonstration for his manifesting personas, but instead giving for the sake of joy at teaching something new. Because by the time if they have made it to the center and walk to another shop, by the time they exit, nothing but new shops are in their immediate view. Did I pass your silly little test, Lord Silver? Murch's frown deepened and he nodded. It seems I will have to wonder who you are as well, said Murch softly, and Lincoln scoffed. Yes, Lord Vector. I hope to one day be worthy of such a showcase, said Lincoln. He does make a valid point. I myself have only ever seen a merchant spiral, as he calls it, used in places my previous master frequented, and only am now able to recognize it for what the specific design being used was, now that I have looked back, said Daisy, the woman entering from the stairs, looking around in awe. This is what is used inside the shopping districts at the highest floors of the Imperial Bank Towers, said Murch, staring at the woman as she strode in, suddenly distracted. I don't think their version is as simple. There is runecraft involved, and the buildings move around to support the desires of those shopping, but yes, they too use this design, said Daisy as she knelt beside Vega. Did you need something, Daisy? Asked Vega, and the young woman nodded, but looked toward the other leaders within the room, and stayed silent once she looked back toward Lincoln's partner. Go on, it's okay, said Vega softly. The woman looked again at those gathered, and sighed. We won't be done before the next wave, said Daisy, testing the environment delicately. Lincoln knew not why she was so timid in this moment, as she was normally very extroverted in her personality. She was working before. Any others I've come across down here seem to change while working their professions. I bet the vendors and the grannies back home just worked so much that their minds were never able to shift between chasing credits and doing anything else. Lincoln left the room mentally, thinking on what his next steps would be as those around him continued to interact, Lincoln practicing the use of his eyes by trying to look in the direction of each speaker. Daisy, I said you are fine. There is nothing you can say that they probably haven't already been told. Daisy sighed again, looked toward Lincoln, who tried to give her a reassuring nod at Vega's mental prodding, and began to relay her message. Even if we only focused on retrieving cores, we won't make it in time for the next wave. The production is moving so quickly, on the other hand, that we now have multiple waiting lists for armor and weaponry. Vega frowned. Who in the fuck is able to buy all that gear with the prices we set? Someone has to be using cores from outside the dimension. Knew it would happen, but this early is insane, especially for casual gear not custom fitted for absolute protection. Lincoln followed the speaker, looking between each person, finding himself wanting to take a step back so that he wouldn't have to turn his head so much. Random thoughts filling his head as he both thought and digested the conversation in his subconscious. So each portal I go through will, may have different species. The thought was wild for Lincoln to process in the moment, causing him to laugh at an awkward moment. Vega's eyes narrowing in his direction as Daisy's frown deepened during her explanation. We have to custom fit everything. We tried the standard sizing methods and we're spending too much time on adjustments. Everything is moving more quickly now that we have started to build our book of builds, said Daisy, and the room went silent. Lincoln looked between Murch and Vega, who both frowned at her, and Antonio, the newly born teleporter, was trying to sneak up the stairs in his obvious terror, forgetting that he had far better tools to escape, the dread of what was happening causing him to move. Fuck is a book of builds? Asked Lincoln, knowing that Vega would want him to interact, rather than finding out everything through Vega's mental education. The supposed low core beside you is building a book with the measurements of all who have arm...
I'm streaming, bud. What's up? She's out.
...and weapons made through her and her people, said Murch, oddly looking at both Lincoln and Daisy. Relevance, Murch. You get weird at shit I feel is regular because I follow the young master around. Explain this as if that isn't something she should be doing while we are down here. Murch crossed his arms, and Vega snapped, pinning Antonio in place in the doorway above. Go get Delilah. Sorry, Murch, you were saying. Vega waved Murch on, and Lincoln didn't like how he and Daisy were being looked at. He felt as if he was being weighed like the food he'd been preparing over the last couple days, only for his thoughts to flicker onward, even as he stared down Murch. Are there going to be different systems of power in each different realm? A book of builds will make it so that every armor set she builds for the colorless army can be either replicated, upgraded easily, and or replaced entirely without challenge. I buy an armor set today. I use it until it breaks, and by the time I get back to repair it, or pick something new, her book of builds already told her that I am both in need through the use of runes, and guess what's waiting for me? Lincoln felt actual shock at what he was told, and looked at Daisy in a new light, both mentally and physically, his eyes widening at the potential of what Daisy could do. Bullshit! Daisy shook her head. No, he's right, which is why I need to get you and the young master fitted soon. Vega shook her head. We will be the last two armored, and that is if we don't earn cards that provide us with stable defenses sooner, said Vega, running her hands through the blonde hair of his first minion. Man, I see her point. We need to get her a body, one she can feel comfortable in. Vega wasn't complaining about being in the body of a young man, but Lincoln could still sense that it bothered her. I see. Well then, what would you like me to do, as we are beginning to get orders from those outside the colorless army? And we don't want to be disrespectful, said Daisy, her eyes speaking to Vega, his bond letting him know her thoughts as she spoke aloud through his first minion. She doesn't want to be harassed by higher core ranks if she says no, which I understand Link. Custom-fitted gear down here probably shouldn't be possible this early. I'd have probably threatened her to make me something too back in my day. Sell to those that do for those you work with, and those that work for you. It is preferential, but still makes more sense than selling the majority of our goods to those with hidden wealth and far more resources than we have been able to cultivate, said Vega aloud. Daisy responded with a nod, touching her nose in a moment of thought. Also, young master, is it true that you are going to buy more sections of camp? Vega rolled a hand through the air, and Daisy continued, glancing at Murch, who was suddenly directing his assistant to complete a task outside the room. I'd like to start herb gardens and a few small farms, mostly for those interested in alchemy. As well as the growing number of chefs following in the path of Sir Second, the food has changed many of those unbelieving in their survival in ways that I believe I may have overlooked, said Daisy, and Murch's head snapped back toward the woman. Again, the young merchant staring as if he was looking at diamonds. Murch, close your mouth. We get it, she is beautiful and incredibly smart. Speak to her when you two aren't working, said Vega, and Lincoln chuckled, only then realizing why the man was staring so hard, assuming it to be entirely flirtation. No, Vin, this isn't funny, and I believe you know why, said Murch coldly, not laughing at all. Yeah, it's not like we do anything but work and sleep anyway, said Lincoln, muttering to himself with a soft laugh, Vega glaring at him before setting her eyes on Murch. No, Murch, I don't, said Vega. You are petty and manipulative, and you're going to make me say this first, aren't you? Everyone in the room looked at Murch then, even Delilah and Antonio, who reappeared with a sudden pop of pressure, filling the room with his growing aura. Volo's brother, said Murch, bending at the waist for the first time Lincoln had ever witnessed. May the seat of your people know ascendancy, said Vega, bending at the waist more deeply than she ever had toward any, before she spoke in Daisy's direction. Volo's sister, said Vega, and Daisy rose to her feet and spoke before turning toward Delilah. May the seat of your people know the void and its embrace. Volo Shista. Delilah smiled and bowed toward Daisy. May your people know the honor of thieves, said Delilah, turning to Murch and continuing the greeting. Volo's brother. Murch glanced in Lincoln's direction, and he frowned, wondering why he was receiving such a strange look during an even more peculiar situation. Yo, Vega, fuck just happened. We found some members of a secret cult, my boy. Keep all signs of understanding off your face at all times. Try to wear the same face as Antonio. Lincoln glanced at the messenger and almost frowned, seeing the young man's distant gaze, as if he was listening to something far away from them all. It's not just him. Delilah's assistants wore the same awkward and muddled expressions of distant thoughts, as well as Murch's own remaining helper. Lincoln decided to fixate on the doorway above them all, locking his eyes there as he curled in his bottom lip slightly. May your people know the thriving empire. Murch pointed at Lincoln and frowned. He's not one of us, asked Murch, and Vega shook her head. No, he is. What do you call his kind again? I think it's called a broken chain, said Vega, only further confusing Lincoln. Not being told everything that Vega knew often left Lincoln in the dark, but he added new questions to his ever-growing list constantly, feeling there would come an appropriate time and place for him to unload and try and catch up with a being with thousands of years of experience. Yeah, Lincoln, good luck with that one. Damn, what a shame. Thought we had a lexicon on our hands for a moment. Not that I still don't feel that way, said Murch, taking his gaze from Lincoln and settling it on Daisy. I'm Daisy Voidwalker. We are old, but not that old. And yes, we are the family of living professionals, said Daisy, causing Vega and Murch to speak at the same time. Figures of the society, none here can claim to be as aged as an ascended family, said Daisy, chuckling as she patted Vega on the shoulder. If I hadn't seen what you were capable of already, I'd call you a liar, but I'm more likely to believe you with each day that passes, said Murch, shifting his gaze toward Vega. Okay, I gotta ask, what the fuck are you talking about? Sorry, Link. These fuckers are in a cult that believes the Imperials aren't the descendants of gods, which they aren't, and that we all can become gods no matter our core rank, also true. Oh, and that they should spill the blood of all cultivators above the red rank and bathe eternally in their blood to ascend back into the heavens. You had me until genocide. What the fuck? Is that why they kept asking you how old your family is? Why do you know the secret handshake woman? Because this started as a hidden branch of my guild, Link. Now let me focus, or spend some of those fucking stat points on mine, so that I can think straight. I know my family is spoken of in rumor often, so I'll save you all the time and admit it, said Vega aloud, and everyone paused. Murch Vector, Delilah Demon Mask, Daisy Voidwalker. It is nice to finally meet more members of the Society's newer generation, and I appreciate your assistance these past few days. My name is Vin Sunblood, third heir to the Sunblood legacy, last in line to inherit the Hidden Empire. Yo, what? Sunblood, why does that sound so familiar? Because it is the name my father used when he evaporated the oceanic oasis known as Atlantis. Lincoln felt everything he'd experienced since meeting Vega click into place. Matters that would have never felt important prior became significant in ways that Lincoln felt his brain latching onto with a panicked desperation. Vega, are you the daughter of Sovereign Omni? Vega didn't answer his question. She stayed as silent as the room around her after she spoke to those gathered, only for a knock to come at the door above, and Chip entered the room. Lincoln felt those around him, not among... Daisy suddenly returning to a knee silently at his side. I was told you were looking for me, young Master Vin, said Chip, slowly making his way downstairs, Lincoln noticing that he was trailed by Runt of White. The young woman looking as lost and confused as Murch now did. Lincoln nearly asked why Murch looked so terrified, but he knew why without thought. His bond was not pretending to be a part of an ancient family. She indeed was a part of an old blood family, one so old that even gods turned to look back over their shoulders at the whisper of the Omni. Yeah, I need you to help me with something, asked Vega. Yes, sir, what do you need? I need you to go with my second and relay any messages that he needs to send back to me over the next few days. Can you manage that? You are the only one with as powerful a dimensional phone that I've come across so far. And I'm sure it will make good footage, said Vega, adding the tidbit at the end to make the suggestion that much more exciting and enticing for the young man. Say no. Chip looked at Lincoln and frowned before nodding toward Vega. Of course I can. You gotta be kidding me, said Lincoln, mumbling underneath his breath. There you go, problem solved. I keep Antonio, and you have not only a scout that needs to be developed and trained, you have a way of calling back. I'm sure Murch has a dimensional phone, right? Vega looked to the sweating Murch, who slowly nodded. The young man's normal confidence wiped away like the light of the morning with the supremacy of the night sky. Yes, my lord. Lincoln, for the first time since becoming bonded with Vega, welcomed silence. Not that he hadn't accepted that he might be tied to the daughter of the destroyer of realms. This was interesting. It was one thing to say one was a part of an old family, but to be the old family was entirely different. Lincoln only knew rumor about Vega's family, but all were even more grim than his own lineage. Maybe that is why we found each other. Fated to meet due to how fucked up our families are. Lincoln chuckled, looking over his shoulder to see Chip staring at him, the young streamer waving as his phone floated nearby. Lincoln had a strange thought for a moment and nearly went to ask Vega, pausing again mentally, even as he and his new companion walked out of the brackish inn. Bitch is building a castle. Lincoln looked up at the tower being built above the much larger inn and bursted into laughter. What's so funny? Asked Chip. Nothing, it's just the young master really doesn't want to lead. And now this, said Lincoln, laughing even harder. What? The brackish inn is probably the finest establishment I've ever stayed in. This only made Lincoln laugh even harder, Lincoln patting the young man's shoulder as they headed toward the nearby market. Exactly, my boy. That's 'cause you never stayed in a bloody palace. So don't get used to it. The rest of the world won't treat us like this without reason, believe me. Chip stayed silent, nodding up at Lincoln in a way that made him feel his stomach turn. Why are you looking at me like that, dude? What the fuck does that face mean? You're not really smiling. It's kind of serious, but more, what is that determination? Lincoln shook his head. We are just checking out portals. That isn't a big deal, right? Tyrone stood alone in the First Imperial's office. The island's soft waves lapped at his back, and the hologram above him and the leader of their army displayed Lincoln Lexx speaking with a young streamer named Chip. He has them all fooled. Maybe a few believe him to not be runt of black, but do you know what he could make possible if he maintained two personas? Tyrone nodded. This is more than likely going to be impossible without a team. I doubt he will be successful in keeping this ruse alive for much longer. The First Imperial's eyes narrowed in his direction. Do you truly believe that? I am beginning to believe that you may be ignorant of what is in front of you. Tyrone, stay silent. He spoke his truth. He'd seen footage of the supposed runt of black and this less fancy second, and nothing shown was truly spectacular beyond one scene. A scene that shook him to his core and made him pray that his runt candidate came back alive without a scratch on his precious little head. Can he increase someone's potential? If those around him do not grow as he does, the council will have me kill everyone within. You know this, right? Which includes your little sister. What is her name? Zenith, right? Imperial White Diamond Core ranked mortal with incredible aura control. Tyrone looked toward his leader, suddenly frowning. His want for a beer forgotten as the woman's words struck him completely sober in an instant. Well, don't. You are our foundation. If you are strong, we must be that much stronger. So no, I do not care that there are potentially strong Black Core youths. What I care about is a foundation not working as it should, bring stability, or be once more snuffed out by calamity. Understand? Tyrone nodded. What would you have me do? I, in all honesty, only have limited means to contact the runt and don't believe that I will be able to sway his vendetta very much. Seeing the deaths of many, due to their rank, changed me and mine. I do not doubt that it changed him in similar ways. The First Imperial tapped her chin, continuing her endless pacing. Give him an incentive that he cannot pass on. Offer him anything, your sister even. We just need him to help those around him grow in the same way that he is. Tyrone suppressed the urge to gape at the woman before him, knowing that she genuinely believed her suggestions to be valid options. However, Tyrone knew that he would never do such a thing. Without asking his sister first, I do not make such decisions for my sister, but if she wants to be sold for situational power, I will not get in her way, thought Tyrone calmly. So why are we here? Asked Chip, the young man's words drawing both Tyrone and the First Imperial's attention back to the stream. Why? Chip nodded, and Lincoln shrugged on camera. Want to make sure the changes I requested to be made to the market are complete? Wouldn't normally have such outlandish expectations, but we have such a large staff now. Ah, see? Now this is a market, said Lincoln, gesturing toward a large circular area that made Tyrone curse as the streamer's camera took the area in. Holy fuck, where did all these people come from? Asked Chip, and Lincoln sighed. Muttering something about Antonio, Tyrone had no idea. Well, it could be multiple things. Dark and Duke might have sent someone to work out the smell distribution array. I said smell. Chip chuckled and waited, Lincoln taking in the movements of those moving through the rather bustling market. Could you explain? My stream is kind of lost as to why you would set up a smell array. Lincoln again sighed as Chip stopped alongside him at the edges of the area, watching as Lincoln pointed with each area he examined during his explanation. Those, Chip, are bathrooms. They don't smell good. They make people want to leave. Good for keeping animals away, however, so forcing that smell downward and away from camp toward the forest. And danger is better than letting it suffocate our good smells, which is coming from those. Those are called food vendors, just in case your stream needed help. Those smells are also being redirected from the air above and sent to areas with high populations of people in other quarters of camp. Do you smell that? asked Lincoln, finishing his sarcastic rundown of what was being displayed with an upward point. Chip raised his chin and sniffed, smelling something truly intoxicating. Oh yeah, that smells amazing. What is that? Lincoln shrugged. I have no idea, buddy. It's whatever is most likely to bring you toward the market at any given time of the day, which is more than likely why, said Lincoln, finally gesturing toward the mass of people, only seeming to enter the market, while none seemed to be exiting. Actually, could you send a message to Antonio? Vin bought him a dimensional phone from one of those golds, right? Chip nodded, reaching a hand toward his phone, the device floating nearby. Yeah, what do you want it to say? Send more aid to the market, or they are going to get overrun in a few hours or less. Actually, send this information over to Daisy and Murch if you can. I think Vin is about to begin one of those tempering lessons he's charging for. Chip nodded, the screen only showing his face as he typed, sending the messages and allowing his phone to take flight once more before a change in perspective was shown. They were walking away from the market and toward another quarter that seemed to be filled with a majority of crafting being done as they made their way through the winding path. Mind sending another message? Asked Lincoln suddenly, and Tyrone had to force himself from glancing to see if the First Imperial was watching him, or the stream. Yeah, go for it, said Chip, suddenly again wielding his phone and incredibly nimble fingers. Let young Master Vin know that our new production quarter needs way more security with how much attention the market is getting. People will begin to know where much of that inventory is coming from. Chip finished sending the message, and even before his phone took flight again, Antonio's voice could be heard. I've been told to escort you to the portal, sir, just in case you have any more measures you feel are appropriate to send back to the young master up until you leave, said Antonio, bending at the waist on camera. The young man shone looking suspiciously in Chip's direction. What? Don't look at him like that, Antonio. We need good publicity like the rest. And somehow, we are the only group with a stream down here so far, so we should count ourselves lucky, said Lincoln without looking back at the two that follow him. Extremely expensive and practically pointless once Duke and Doc get their communication grid up, said Antonio, still looking at Chip oddly. Yeah, but what happens when their grid gets attacked? What'll everyone with lesser models do then? Lincoln nodded. See, he is useful, not able to break through dimensions like you, but still useful, said Lincoln, and neither Chip nor Antonio knew who'd been complimented truly. My questions lie in how a street rat grew to understand so much. Intuition can only get you so far. What he is doing is graceful, and I want to believe that you are feigning innocence after having had secretly trained a monster you found on the street. But from what I have been told by my own Red, is that you only recently interacted with him. So where is all of this coming from? Tyrone looked toward his leader, and then back toward Lincoln and chuckled. Genetics, ma'am. He's a lexicon, of the Lexx. Doesn't that within itself come with all kinds of potentially secretly bestowed knowledge? His family disappeared a decade ago. What if they left him some sort of informational inheritance? Ascended, not disappeared. That is a misunderstanding that many need to start distinguishing more, especially with the potential rise of this boy. Tyrone raised an eyebrow and dare not interrupt if the woman was going to speak further. You seem unbothered. Do you not understand that your sister's life is at risk? Tyrone looked back and forward between the stream and his leader as he spoke, honestly distracted by the conversation being had, by youths that didn't know the weight of what they discussed so casually. My sister is a sacrifice of Imperial. Until she exits on a platform, she is no more alive to me than those we watch now. Distant characters playing roles outside my purview. The First Imperial tapped her chin again in thought. Keep your eyes open from here, boys. The wildlife is far more active now that... Lincoln stopped speaking and began to spin slowly as they entered the tree line outside the cam's walls. Well, looks like this might be harder than we thought. The camera view changed, and just beyond the tree line was what seemed to be a territorial war of electrified birds that dive-bombed their rather resilient foe, which was a pack of water elemental snakes that moved like mini hydras, their liquid bodies twisting between one another endlessly without tangling or knotting as they spray water into the air at the birds. Somehow, the foes were evenly matched, as the geyser-spitting snakes worked together to spray their avian opponents and were able to knock them from the sky, leaving them twitching and unconscious on the ground, while the concentrated explosions from the birds often were able to obliterate packs of the liquid snakes, often ending with the reptiles unable to regenerate their forms like their more matured hydridic cousins. Lincoln turned toward Chip and Antonio, patting them both on the shoulder before he turned back toward the chaos and took off running as he yelled over his shoulder. Well, boys, good luck.
Woo! I think I'm gonna leave it there today, guys, because
You are group. Live 0 hours, 58 minutes. End stream. Live 1 hour, 20 group. 2 viewers. Group. Live 1 hour, 27 minutes.
Yeah.
Pages.
Let me check this.
Pages. Finder. 20. Aura of character list for F20. Aura of the Earth. Pages document.
The next episode, we're officially caught up. I actually don't even think the entire episode is written for this one, so we'll be writing this Friday for Lineage of Lincoln Lexx. I think we'll be writing on Tuesday and Friday for sure. Monday, I think we have a few chapters to get through before we're caught up on Symphony Omen. Wednesday, we definitely have quite a bit of chapters to get through for Mythical Heretic. And Thursday, I think we might be close to caught up, so we might be writing Thursday as well on Cornerstone Coins. Sorry, I know my camera's over here. It's over here, and I gotta remember that. But yeah, no, this was great. Remember, guys, best comment on these videos, free book giveaway. I had something else I wanted to tell you guys too. I thought about it midstream and didn't want to talk through the chapter. Free giveaway, vote at the website, coming soon. Gonna edit the Patreon, Discord. It's created. All of these things can be found in the description to these videos. And I'm gonna update the rest of the I'm gonna update the rest of the not the status pages I've been talking about forever, but man, sorry guys, I'm getting tired. Yeah, I should probably just shut it down. But I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna be back tomorrow with some more stuff. If I go take my shower and I'm not deadly tired, I might stream one or two episodes of Spell Tank before I go to sleep today. Tomorrow, if you're interested, guys, come back, because I'm going to start my Pocket FM experiment, like I've been doing the RoyalRoad experiment, and I'm going to do those every Sunday. And I will be writing my new series on Pocket FM starting tomorrow. So, really excited. Gonna use a couple elements from a couple other stories that I was drafting and didn't, push forward on. So, should be a lot of fun to see how that goes. Yeah, but had a blast. This was amazing. I'm glad that I got to redo this. I know yesterday I didn't, I fell asleep and it wasn't great, but I'm gonna add this to this playlist. I have all my playlists set up. That's what I need to do. Update my YouTube page. I'm gonna update that for everybody who's dropping by and seeing what we're doing, so that when they drop at our story page, everything's organized and they can, enjoy. So, all right, guys. I hope you're writing. I hope you're being good to yourselves. I hope that you are being brave and challenging yourselves and enjoying your life and getting the value out of getting every story out of yourself and sharing it with the world, because that's really what's got me through all my hard times. So I appreciate you guys supporting me. I appreciate every bit of engagement, any likes, any comments, any subscribe, any like I said, everybody who's been buying my books, that means the world to me. Makes me want to cry on stream, but we ain't gonna do that. We're gonna stay strong. Yeah, but otherwise, guys, I hope all is well. Come back tomorrow, or let the Pocket FM experiment, which I'm so excited to start, and yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And I'm gonna start developing my video, maybe with the Pocket FM video tomorrow. My objective is to get partnered with YouTube, Twitch, and Pocket FM. So I need about 10 watch hours a day over the next, sorry, it was like 8.4 or something like that a day over the next year, pretty much. If I want to, you know, if we have some crazy explosive growth and we're getting like 20 hours a day, that's cool. We'll do it in half the time. But no, we want to get partnered, and we want to get our watch hours up, because we started at 9 subscribers last Sunday, and we're closing in on 350. So yeah, we're doing okay. I think in a month I'll have well more over the Twitch is going to be a lot more strenuous, because I'm going to need like active viewers that come back every time, and you know, a lot of engagement, and people actually have to comment now on Twitch to even be considered a viewer, and all this different stuff. So we'll get it worked out. We're going to keep pushing. All of this is coming together, and actually a blast. I've been looking forward to this every day. So thank you so much, guys. And like I said, be good to yourselves. I'm going to do my best to keep this stuff fun and
19,
engaging.
20. Aura of the Earth.
So
Pages. Streamlabs desk. End stream. Button. Live 1 hour. 33 minutes. End stream.